Open setup races. It's one of the hardest things for people who don't know a whole lot about setups. So, what are you supposed to do if you don't want to go out and buy setups or spend hours making setups, especially if you don't know how to? Well, in this video, I'm going to show you a very simple, literally 5-step process that you can use on any setup for the iRacing NASCAR trucks using the iRacing setup that will improve the time and the handling. And the best part is it literally takes maybe 5 minutes to do. What's up, everybody? Thomas Brandon here. Thank you very much, as always, for joining me. And like I said, we're going to be taking a look at how to improve the iRacing setup. Now, this works for the NASCAR trucks. You can also do this on the Xfinities and stuff like that. It's just a little bit different, the components. I'm going to do another video for the Xfinity cars coming up later. But for the trucks, what I'm going to show you works like clockwork, and it'll work on every single setup with the exception of super speedways like restrictor plates, Daytona, Talladega, and then obviously if you're on like a road course or something you don't want to do. But in terms of every other track, right, this will work. Okay, this absolutely works. It's how I build the free setups for SSR. All right, this is where I start. Now, will you do these 5 steps and then boom, that's it? You've got a setup off to the running that you're going to be winning every race? No, I'm not going to tell you that. Is it even going to fit you perfectly? No, I'm not going to tell you that neither. Will it provide you a much better base than what iRacing is providing you? Yes, it will, and it will be faster, handle better, and be more competitive. That I can absolutely guarantee because I've tested this like crazy. I don't bring stuff out to you guys that I don't test. Okay, so this will absolutely work. Now, when it comes to doing this, okay, like I said, there's literally, it's just like 5 steps, and you're not changing a bunch of things. Okay, those 5 things are literally just the adjustments. Okay, so let's hop over to the garage and let's take a look at the iRacing setup. All right, so we're at Charlotte, which is where the official series is at right now. At the time of recording this, I've got on the Charlotte 2018 setup. So this is the iRacing setup for Charlotte, and this is the fixed one. This is not the open setup. The reason I did this with the fixed one and not the open one, and for the most part, the open one is usually like the same. There's rarely any changes to them. But the reason I did this to the fixed one is because all of them have a fixed setup. All the tracks have a fixed setup. Not all of the tracks have an open setup. Okay, so that's why I did that. Okay, so what we're gonna do first is we've got on the iRacing setup. We're gonna go out and we're just gonna turn a few laps. Okay, and I have turned a couple laps already. We are on lap 5 now, and I did that just because I haven't driven the iRacing setup yet. And I just want to make sure that I know how it's going to react before I try to push it hard. Because I'm going to drive this thing hard. I'm not going to try to take it easy. I want to give it a true comparison. I want to drive this hard and try to get a feel for it so I can make the changes to it and we can see the real improvement to it, okay? So, first lap with every setup, not just the iRacing setup, with every setup, always give the tires a chance to at least come up to temp a little bit. I cannot count how many times I've been in races where there's cautions on lap 1, and it's usually because somebody's pushing it way too hard. Like, give the tires a chance to come up to temp. Right? These are long races. There's no reason to push it to the edge. Once you get a lap in, maybe 2, then you can really start pushing it. Okay. Now this setup, I can tell you right now, is actually not that bad. iRacing does a pretty, I don't know who it is that builds these, so I'll just refer to them as iRacing. iRacing does a pretty good job with these setups. They do give you a good platform to use. The biggest difference between a setup that, for example, a setup that I build in the Insider program, right, which is, it's a paid setup, right, so the program starts at $4 a month, but the biggest difference from like something that I build in there, and then from the iRacing setup, okay, if we're looking at the trucks, for example, is not like the overall speed in terms of like each lap, right? The iRacing setup, you can lay down a decent lap time with. Yes, it'll be slower than the setup that I built from scratch, but the biggest difference in them is going to be the fall off. That's usually where you see the biggest difference. A setup that you can build for your driving over the course of a long run, you're going to be able to take care of the tires more, and that's going to allow you to not have the tines fall off as much as something that is usually on the tighter side. iRacing setups are on the tighter side because it's much easier to drive a tighter car for somebody who is less experienced than a loose car, right? And that's why we see these setups a little bit on the tight side, okay? So we've got some laps in now. We've got a good baseline. Like I said, I did a couple laps before with this setup just to kind of make sure that I had a feel for it. And right now, if I bring up the session, the fastest lap that I turned was a 30.7. Okay, 30.76. That's with the iRacing setup. If we look at those last few laps there, we did a 31.0, and then once we got the tires up to temp, we did a 30.8, 30.9, 30.8. Up here, we did 30.7, 30.7, 30.8. Okay, so that's what we're looking at with the iRacing setup. All right. Now, we're going to take this setup, and we're going to basically optimize it. Okay, would be the best way of putting it. And it's really, really simple. Okay, I cannot tell you how simple it is. So the first thing that you're going to do is first of all, make a note of your ride heights because you're going to be resetting. So we're going to put both of these rear truck arms front. We're going to take them from the bottom and put them to the top. Okay, always do one at a time. So we're going to put this to the top, and then we're going to reset this ride height to 7593, or as close as we can get to it. And then we're going to do the same thing over here. This to the top, and this was actually, I think, at 749, somewhere right around there. Okay. The other thing that you need to pay attention to is the rake from the front to the back. So you hear people talk all the time, right? About got to seal off the front splitter to get the most speed out of the car. Yes, you do, but there's a method to that. It's not just getting the splitter down. You see, the splitter is actually curved, okay? And so you want the splitter to be down, but you also need the truck in the back down at a certain angle too, so it seals off the sides of the splitter. If you have the back too high and the front too low, that splitter is going to dig into the ground. What I find with the trucks is that rake, that optimal front to back rake, is somewhere in between 1.8 and 2 inches, meaning you want the back to be 1.8 to 2 inches higher than the front. So whatever your front is, you want that rear 1.8 to 2 inches higher, okay? iRacing, for the most part, that's the zone that they're in, right? So they actually have a pretty good rake on the car, which they should. I mean, if they know the physics, right? It's their sim, so they should, okay? So we did the trailing arms, all right? The next thing that we're going to do is we're going to come up here to the tape. iRacing is always very, very conservative with their tape. You can almost religiously add 15% to their tape. Okay, like I said, there are some exceptions, especially if you look at a track like, well, obviously Daytona Talladega, but if you look at a track like Martinsville, for example, right? You're not carrying a lot of speed there. You're in very tight quarters, right? So if they've got 50% tape on the car, you probably don't want to go to 65%, right? But a lot of the other track, I mean, literally 75, 80% of the tracks, you can add 15% front tape and it not affect the car in terms of like overheating at all. I've tested this a ton. 200 and I believe it's 280 degrees on the water temp and oil temp, like that's when it starts to get hot. So you want to keep it below 280. What I always do, and I actually use Motec, I use telemetry, and this that I'm doing, I'm going over this so for you guys who don't use telemetry and don't want to use telemetry. The easiest way to do it is drive a few laps, see where that oil and water temp is, because after like 7 or 8 laps, you'll see the highest level, and you can see it on your gauges. If it's, like 270 and lower while you're racing, you should be able to race with cars around you and it not get too hot, right? If it's getting up to like 274, 275, then you want to pull some tape off, okay? I try to go for about a 10-degree buffer is what I usually shoot for when I'm building the custom setups on the Insider. And so that's what I typically will do with the free setups, except I'm much more conservative with the free setups because, like I said, I'm not using telemetry. I'm not spending nearly as much time. Okay, so with the iRacing one, if you add 10, 15%, should be fine. All right, but as everything, test it. Make sure you test it. Don't just go out, run it, blow it up, and say, "Hey, man, you told me to do this." All right, I'm telling you, my experiences can, but always test it yourself. So that's the second thing. Third thing that we're going to do is we are going to double this left rear spring rate. If there is a 300 on the left rear, go to a 600. If there's a 350, go to a 700. If it's 400, go to 800. Double it, okay? If it's at a spring that you can't double, meaning let's say it's 500, well, you can't go to 1,000. 800 is the max, then just max it out. But that's what you want to do. They run super soft left rear springs, and just double it. I mean, like legitimately double it. Because one of the reasons why these things can be so hard to drive later on in the race is that left rear gets so soft, and then as you start burning off those front tires, it just doesn't feel good. It just doesn't feel good, and then it starts to feel really unstable because that left rear is so soft that the car starts hopping around and stuff, especially on a track like Charlotte. Okay, so just double that left rear spring. Trust me on this, it'll make a difference. Okay, so we've done tape, left rear spring, and the two trailing arms. All right. So, and I count the two trailing arms as one step. The next thing that we're going to do is we're going to actually drop the car down, or the truck in this case. We're going to drop the truck down. Now, iRacing does a pretty good job of getting the aero package, the aerodynamics, the splitter, like we were talking about, sealed off so you can have good speed, but it can definitely be improved. Where I start is I just start with 2 clicks down on all 4 corners of the car. So we're just going to go 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. Okay, literally just like that. 2 corners down on each corner of the car, or 2 corners down, 2 clicks down on each corner of the car. The last thing that we have to do, because although we added some tape here, right, which will loosen up the car some, we drastically increased, right, our left rear spring, doubling it 350 to 700. That's a big jump. That's going to tighten this thing up quite a bit. Okay. So what we want to do, because iRacing setups are always on the loose or on the tight side anyways, and we want this thing to not only be good in the beginning, but we don't want it to be so tight that it's burning off the right front. We want it to be a little bit more on the free side at the start of the run, so as the front tires wear, this thing will actually continue to be good. It won't fall off. The way you do that is you start with the truck a little bit more free at the beginning of the run. So we're going to do this by increasing both ends of the track bar by 2 inches. Okay, I know that's a lot, but we're going to increase it by 2 inches. Okay, so we're going to go to 8.5 here and 11.5 here. Oops, I went past it. All right. And you guys, that's it. Anything else that changes that you've noticed, okay, like here, this toe in, this was at 0. We're just going to put it back to 0. Okay. But that's it. The cross weight is basically about where it was. I think it was 57.8, 57.6. That's close enough. But that's it. Those 5 things right there. Okay. And now we're going to save this. And I'm just going to save this right here as Charlotte Oval video. And now let's go out and run some laps and let's see how it does. Now, one thing to note, because we increased that track bar like that and we added some tape and everything, even with that stiffer spring, the car is it's going to definitely feel different, right? So keep that in mind, like your first lap or two while you go out to kind of get used to the truck. Don't just go sailing off into turn one, because you'll probably, I shouldn't say you will probably, you might find yourself spinning out or wrecking. So give it a lap or so to kind of get used to it. You can see on that first lap, we're almost 1/10 of a second faster. And the truck feels much more comfortable, much more stable. I actually drove it in too deep there. It still felt okay. It's still faster. You can see I can put that thing right down on the blue line. The thing feels great. It's got good speed. It's got stability, which is obviously the most important thing. We want a car. Handling means, or speed means nothing if the thing can't handle, right? And you can see we got down to 30.6, all right? Just doing those 5 adjustments. And how long did that take? What, 5 minutes? And it would probably take even less. The reason it took 5 minutes is because I'm sitting there talking and explaining it, right? Takes no time at all. Now, here's the best part. That's how you create your racing setup. You want to know how you create your qualifying setup? It's even easier. This is what you do. You're going to take this, you're going to put your tape up to 100%, and then you remember those track bar adjustments that we made where we went up 2 inches? You're going to go down 2 inches. You're just going to literally go back down to where you came from. We were at, what, 12.5? Now we're at, oh no, we were at 11.5, so now we're at 9.5. There you go. And now we've got our qualifying setup. Now, with the qualifying setup, you might find, especially on the first lap, that the truck is going to feel loose. So you might have to actually decrease that track bar maybe another 1/2 inch on both sides. But for the most part, this is the starting point that I use when I'm building the free setup. Anytime you pin the nose, and if you're not changing a bunch of other stuff, the truck might feel loose. But for the most part, like I said, it's a great starting point. All right, let's just see what we got here. Yeah, she's definitely a little slippery in the back end. As you can see, 0.2 of a second off of our fastest lap with our race setup.
The water temp is getting high.
And right there you can see how it says how the water temp is getting high. Now, if you want to know where that's at, where that point is on your gauge, like if you're like, well, Tommy, is it 280 or is it 240 or whatever? And there you go. You just go back to your replay and back it up, and you can see that gauge basically right there, when it was hitting 280, that's where it's starting to get hot, right? So anyways, to the setup, as you can see, 5 simple adjustments on the iRacing setup to create your race setup, and then 2 adjustments off of that race setup to get your qualifying setup. Super, super simple. It really can be that simple. Now, yes, is this going to be as fast as a custom built setup from the ground up? For me, no, it's not. All right. For those of you who don't want to have to spend money, this can work. It can absolutely work. And like I said, it's the process that I use for building the free setups. Now, right? I wanted to come up with the basically a step-by-step process, and that's what this is. So remember, you're just doing the trailing arms, the left rear spring, the front tape, you're dropping all 4 corners of the car, and then you're raising the track bars up. That's it. That's all you're doing. And then for your qualifying setup, you're taking that exact same race setup, taping off the grill, and dropping the track bars back down. And you're good to go. And you've now got a setup, right, that you can, well, we were doing 2/10 of a second faster, almost 2/10 of a second faster than we were with the iRacing setup in the race trim. And then we knocked another 2/10 of a second off of that for our qualifying. And it takes maybe 7 or 8 minutes. So I hope this helped you guys. I hope this makes it easier for you to be able to take the iRacing setup, make some adjustments, and now you can go into those open setup races knowing that you'll have something that can be competitive, right? That can absolutely be competitive. Because once you've got this, even if this is what you use to build the platform and then you make changes to it to make it better, now you don't have to spend a bunch of time trying to come up with what springs to run or what, all that other stuff. It just saves you a bunch of time. The platform is the hardest part. This gives you the platform. Then you can take, we've got the free setup guides on our free membership at schoolofsimracing.net. You take the free setup guide and it'll tell you, hey, make this air pressure adjustment, right? Change your cross weight X amount, right? And you can just fine tune it if you even need to. Because I can tell you right now, this right here felt really, really good. So that's going to do it all for this video. Now, really quick before you go, do me a favor, please. If you like this, hit that like button. Also, please subscribe to the YouTube channel. We have a ton of viewers who are actually not subscribers. So please subscribe because it helps us grow the community. But more importantly, it allows me the ability to keep, giving back to the sim racing community the way that I want. Like, I got a lot of big plans that I want to do for just sim racing as a whole, not SSR, but like for sim racing as a whole. And this channel is a big part of that. It's a big driver of that. So please like, subscribe, and then share it if you know other people out there who struggle with this stuff, who have problems, need help with the setups or whatever. Share this with them. And finally, I almost forgot, if you want to join the Asphalt Masterclass, which I've actually got coming up, it will be starting. The Masterclass will be posted in the free membership. It's going to be completely free, and we're going to be starting off in the D class with the late models, the late model stock, and then the ARCA cars. If you want to get that, if you want to watch those videos and go through all those trainings, like I said, it's all completely free. Then make sure you head over to schoolofsimracing.net and click that button that says join community. That will get you the access to the free membership site where the masterclass will be posted. But that'll do it. Thank you very much as always for joining me. Until next time, good luck, good racing. Take care.